6.6 is comparing fractions using benchmarks. Benchmark is really just a fancy word for a known size or amount that helps you understand different sizes or amounts. So really just sort of a reference point for us. And our benchmark in this case in everything we do is going to be 1/2. So we're going to compare everything to 1/2. Instead of finding common denominators all the time or really going through and doing a lot of work, comparing fractions using these benchmarks is going to be helpful. So let's look at something like 3/12 and 1/2. So I could find a common denominator for these, but what hopefully we've started recognizing is other equivalent fractions for 1/2. So I need to think 3/12, 1/2. I could draw out a fraction bar, 12 pieces and 1/2 every single time. That'd be my 1/2. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I could shade in 1, 2, 3, and I would clearly see that 3/12 was smaller. But we can start thinking, what's an equivalent fraction for 1/2? I know that an equivalent fraction is 6/12, so I'm going to make it that same one. A lot easier to look at it like this and go, oh, definitely 6/12 is greater than 3/12, so 3/12 is less than 6/12. So we can kind of think of it with fraction bars. The other way we could think of it is with a number line. We could say 0 is here, 1 is here. I'm going to put my 1/2 here. And then we could start sharing these. So I could say 1/12, 2/12, 3/12, 4/12, 5/12. We could go through 6/12, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12/12. We could say, okay, if this is 1/2, and I know 1/12, 2/12, 3/12 is right here. Again, I can see that 3/12 is much less than 1/2. That's a pretty easy one. Sometimes we'll have problems where neither of our fractions will be halves. So for example, we might have, let's do 2/8 and 3/4. So we're going to compare both of these to our benchmarks. We're going to kind of compare them separately. When I think 2/8 compared to 1/2 and 3/4 compared to 1/2. So 1/2 in eighths, I know that would be 4/8. Which one's bigger? I know 4/8 is bigger, which makes 1/2 bigger. So 2/8 is less than 1/2. A fraction that's a half in fourths would be 2/4. I know that 3/4 is larger than 2/4. So here I can see, okay, 2/8, if I drew this all out on a number line, 2/8 is less than 1/2, 3/4 is greater than 1/2. So I know that 3/4 is going to be greater than 2/8. Because already here, this is greater than 1/2, and this is less than 1/2. So sometimes we'll have problems like that, where if we can look and say, well, I know that this is less than 1/2, and I already know that this is greater than 1/2. I don't have to do any common denominators. I don't have to do all of that extra math. Let's look at one more example. Let's do 8/10 and 3/8. So again, I could say here, figure out a common denominator, but I could also think, okay, what are my benchmarks for tenths and what are my benchmarks for eighths? I know my benchmark for tenths would be 5/10. I know my benchmark for eighths would be 4/8. So I'm going to look, is this fraction on my left greater than, less than, or equal to my benchmark of 1/2? Well, 8/10 is greater than, I'm going to make a little note to myself, it's greater than 1/2. When I look at my fraction on the right, 3/8. Is 3/8 greater than, less than, or equal to my benchmark fraction, 4/8? It's less than. So I can say, I know that this one's already greater than 1/2, this one's less than 1/2. I don't need to find a common denominator. I know that 8/10 is going to be greater than 3/8.